This is what a farm looked like 200 years ago. And this is how we grow our food today. Now, aside from the obvious differences in size and technology, on the surface, these farms appear to have some similarities. But in reality, they tell two completely different stories. The first is a story of community. It's a story of the people who use their land to grow food, not only for themselves, but for those around them. Our early farmers knew exactly who every one of their customers were, and everyone who bought food from them knew exactly where their food came from. Fast forward 200 years. Corporate farms today no longer tell the story of community. Instead, the stories of disconnection, misconception, and worst of all, destruction. The disconnection we have within our food systems is twofold. We ourselves have become disconnected with the way we grow food. Most of us have no idea where our food comes from or even how it's grown. But our food systems themselves have also become disconnected with us. You see, there's a real reason that rural farming worked so well 200 years ago, and that's because it was a system designed to meet the needs of that time. But the world we live in today is completely different from the one that existed 200 years ago. In fact, no other 200-year period in history has ever brought about as much change as the one that we've just experienced. And virtually every aspect of our society has adapted to accommodate this change, but our food systems have not. Not too long ago, I was out of town to attend a national conference on entrepreneurship. And it struck me that if our transportation systems had evolved at the same rate as our food systems, I would have brought myself to Toronto riding in a horse-drawn carriage, possibly with modern tires. But most of us don't think like this, and the fact that we don't just goes to show the amount of misconception that plagues our food systems. There's a lot of people who would tell you that there's nothing wrong with the way we grow food. I mean, if I can walk into any grocery store today and buy virtually whatever I want, things must be working, right? The scariest part about the problems created by our food systems is that, for the most part, these problems aren't highly visible. And this has allowed our food systems to embark on a global mass of destruction. This destruction stems from the fact that we're trying to feed today's world with a system designed for 200 years ago. And to compensate for the obvious inadequacies, we've resorted to using chemicals as the main ingredient in food production. Now, call me crazy, but it's my personal opinion that if the guy responsible for growing your food has to wear a hazmat suit to do so, something's wrong. And it turns out I'm not crazy. You wouldn't be able to tell by looking at it, but this chemically infused tomato barely has half the nutritional value as a tomato that was sold in the grocery store only 30 years ago. Chemical agriculture is destroying our food. It's also destroying our environment. It's polluting our lakes, and it's bringing us into a crisis of soil depletion. This is when the soil becomes infertile. It can no longer be used to grow food. In a way, it's Earth's way of saying, I can't take this anymore. Chemical agriculture is cutting off the very hand that feeds us. And did I mention the air pollution that comes from transporting this food hundreds and thousands of kilometers from farms into cities? Or what about the fact that rising prices will soon put nutritious food out of reach for many people right here in North America? Or the fact that somehow, over the next 30 years, our food systems, which are already insufficient, are going to have to find a way to feed an additional 3 billion people. I remember when I first became aware of these problems. It really unsettled me to learn that something that I had taken for granted my entire life was so harmful and so flawed. But what was even worse was when I realized that every time I buy produce from the grocery store, I'm funding an operation to destroy our environment. In fact, we all are. So I started looking for answers. I wanted to find a way that we could grow food, not just for today, but for tomorrow as well. I wanted to find a solution that was in every way sustainable. And that's when I had the life-changing experience of learning about urban agriculture. Now, I don't come from a traditional background in agriculture or environmental science. I'm actually a business dropout with passions for entrepreneurship, hockey, and country music. So this whole notion of growing food in cities was completely new to me. But the more I learned about urban agriculture, the more I wanted to find out about it. I started learning about people who, right now, right here in North America, are taking rooftops and transforming them into productive sources of food. For me, this was a huge discovery. It allowed me to create a whole new worldview of agriculture and what it meant to grow food. It gave me a vision of entire cities being fed by small-scale sustainable farms. Most importantly, it gave me hope and excitement. I realized that we now had a way to solve all the problems created by our existing food systems. You see, urban agriculture isn't just limited to growing food on rooftops. It encompasses turning any space within a city into a productive source of food. Backyards, parking lots, even the vacant space beside buildings can all be converted into small-scale sustainable farms. And by using greenhouses, we can grow food on a year-round basis, something that's always been out of reach for rural farmers in many parts of the world. And through innovations like aquaponics or fish farming, we can grow food without even having the need for soil. There are so many cool and creative ways to use urban agriculture to grow food in cities, but they all have the same fundamental purpose. They allow us to grow better food at lower cost in a way that's better for the environment. The theme of this year's talks is adventure. And for me personally, adventure is the perfect word to describe my experience with urban agriculture. A little over 2 years ago, I started creating and selling products specifically to help people grow food in cities. And of course, part of this work involves interacting with my customers. I was able to meet a very diverse group of people, some rich, some poor, some educated, some not. But as diverse as this group was, they were all united by one fundamental trait. They were incredibly passionate about how their food was grown and where it came from. And seeing this passion firsthand allowed me to realize that urban agriculture isn't a market, it's not a trend or an industry. Urban agriculture is a movement. It's a movement about people. It's a movement about people wanting to create a more sustainable future for tomorrow. So 6 months ago, I decided to do something with this movement, and I started a new project. I began connecting these passionate people with commercial property owners. And through each and every one of these connections, we create an urban farm. And I'm very happy to be able to share with you that the reception to this concept has been so overwhelmingly positive that next year we'll be putting these farms in every major city across Canada. Now, I could talk all day about urban agriculture and how great it is and all the problems it solves, but it comes with a grain of salt. And that is aside from a handful of individual projects, it's not what's happening right now. And why not? The answer is because we haven't made it happen. And for each and every one of us, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be a part of revolutionizing our food systems. There's never been a greater need for innovation within our food systems than right now, and there will never be a better time to do it. And unlike many of the social problems we face, food security is something we can all play a part in. In fact, like it or not, we all do play a part in it. The question isn't whether or not you can make an impact. The question is how will you make your impact? Maybe you'll make the choice to commit to a local food diet and actively source out food grown within the very city in which you live. Maybe you'll take a hands-on approach and become an urban farmer, sustainably growing food for yourself and for those around you. Or maybe you have something else to offer. Your own creative way of helping us achieve better, more sustainable food systems through urban agriculture. The three main takeaways I want to leave you with are, 1, our existing food systems are broken and outdated. They're destroying our food and our environment. 2, the solution is urban agriculture. Through it, we can grow better food at lower cost in a way that's better for our environment. And 3, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be a part of revolutionizing our food systems. The mantra of TED is ideas worth spreading. And because of this, I'm going to ask all of you to do a quick favor for me. Over the course of the next 24 hours, approach 3 people you're close with and ask them, where does your food come from? Let's work together not only to spread this idea, but to build this movement and help create more sustainable food systems for tomorrow so that 20 years from now, a picture of a farm will once again tell a story of community. Thank you.